Part 1. You have a vision of the person you want to become. Wealthy, confident, fulfilled. You have tried to get there. You've used affirmations to plaster over your old identity. You've used meditation to try and silence it. You have been fighting a war against your own self, trying to kill the old you so a new one can be born. But the universe does not work that way. Your identity is not a costume you can change. It is a frequency. And you cannot lie about your frequency. This story will reveal a profound and radical truth. The fastest way to change your reality is to change your identity, but the way to change your identity has nothing to do with thinking or silencing. It is a precise, physical, and environmental art. It is the science of tuning. And this is the method. Kai was a ghost in a beautiful machine. At 37, he was one of Seoul's most celebrated minimalist architects, a man renowned for his clean lines, his intellectual rigor, and his almost inhuman attention to detail. His life was a perfect reflection of his work, a curated, controlled, and emotionally sterile masterpiece. He had achieved every single goal he had ever set for himself. He had the career, the apartment, the awards, the respect. And he was living in a state of quiet, soul-crushing despair. He had built a perfect life for a man he did not recognize. His most sacred and most secret desire was not for something he could build, but for a feeling he could not even name. It was a feeling of warmth, of connection, of spontaneous, messy, and joyful life. He dreamed of designing not just beautiful empty spaces, but homes that were filled with laughter and love. He dreamed of having a life that felt less like a museum and more like a garden. His antagonist was his own powerful and deeply entrenched, static identity. This was the version of himself he had so perfectly and deliberately constructed, the brilliant, controlled, and emotionally detached architect. This identity was a fortress. It had protected him from the messiness of life, and it had brought him great success. But it had also become his prison. He would try to visualize a warmer, more connected life, but the vision would shatter against the cold, hard walls of his current identity. He would try to affirm, "I am a warm and loving person," but the words would feel like a cheap lie in the silent, empty echo of his apartment. His identity was broadcasting a powerful, coherent, and constant frequency of cool, controlled isolation, and his reality was a perfect, flawless match to that broadcast. Is he doomed to live as a stranger in his own perfectly designed life, forever trapped in the frequency of the identity he has so carefully constructed? Or is there a way to retune the very instrument of the self, a method that bypasses the mind and speaks directly to the physics of our being? If you have ever felt that your own identity, the very person you are, is the one thing standing in the way of the person you want to become, subscribe. This story contains the lost science of self-tuning. Part 2. The hollow echo of Kai's life finally became a deafening roar. The previous loop closed. He had identified his static identity as the source of his profound unhappiness. The new loop opened with a professional crisis that was a perfect mirror of his internal state. He lost a major career-defining competition to design Seoul's new center for a living future. His design was, as always, praised for its technical brilliance, but the jury's final verdict was a devastating blow. While architecturally flawless, the design lacks a fundamental sense of humanity. It is a beautiful machine with no ghost inside. The critique was not just about his work, it was about his soul. It was the confirmation of his deepest fear. He was the machine with no ghost. The loss shattered his professional composure and sent him into a tailspin. He cancelled his meetings, turned off his phone, and walked out of his perfect, sterile life. He took a train to the southern coast of Korea, to a small, ancient port city he had once visited as a child, a place that was the polar opposite of Seoul's hypermodernity, a place of chaos, of color, of the messy, unpredictable sea. He found himself in a part of the city known for its traditional artisans. It was on a quiet, narrow street that he was drawn to a sound. It was not a beautiful sound. It was a dissonant, powerful, and deeply resonant clang of a hammer on hot metal. He followed it to a small, dark, and ancient workshop. The sign was a simple, elegant piece of calligraphy depicting a single, perfectly formed bell. Inside, The air was thick with the smell of coal smoke, hot metal, and an energy that was both ancient and intensely alive. An old man, perhaps in his 90s, with a face like a weathered landscape and arms roped with the muscles of a lifetime of work, was hammering a glowing, red-hot piece of bronze. This was Master Jean, one of Korea's last living masters of traditional bell casting. Kai stood and watched for an hour as the old man worked, a dance of fire, metal, and pure, focused intention. When the metal had cooled, Master Jean finally looked at him. His eyes were not the gentle eyes of a mystic. They were the sharp, focused, and incredibly precise eyes of a master craftsman. "You are very quiet," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "But your silence is very loud. It is the silence of an empty room, not a peaceful one." Kai, the celebrated architect, felt like a child. He found himself telling this stranger everything. The awards, the emptiness, the failed project, the feeling of being a ghost. He spoke of his static identity, his inability to feel, to connect. Master Jean listened, wiping the sweat from his brow. "You are an architect who has built a beautiful, perfect cage," he said. "And you have forgotten that the cage is not you. You are the bird who is meant to sing." He then gestured to a massive, magnificent bronze bell that hung in the center of the workshop, a masterpiece that seemed to hum with a silent, powerful energy. "That bell," he said, "did not begin with this beautiful form. It began as a chaotic, ugly mixture of raw earth, tin, and copper. It had to go through the fire. It had to be hammered. It had to be broken and melted and reformed 100 times. Its final, perfect frequency is a memory of its entire journey." He then gave Kai a task. "You want to change your frequency," he said, a note of amusement in his voice. "This is not a thing you can do with your mind. The mind is just the echo. The frequency is in the metal. It is in the body. Your task is this. You will not think. You will not meditate. For 1 week, you will come here, and you will be my apprentice. Your only work will be to tend the fire and to work the bellows. You will feel the heat. You will feel the chaos. You will learn the first secret of the metal." He has found a master alchemist, a man who understands that a new form, a new frequency, can only be born from the chaotic fire of transformation. But can a man who has spent his entire life avoiding the messy, chaotic, and unpredictable heat of life possibly find his new self in the heart of the forge? Part 3. Kai returned to the forge the next day, dressed in simple work clothes that felt like a foreign costume. This closed the previous loop. He had accepted his apprenticeship. The new loop of conflict began the moment he stepped into the searing, chaotic world of the workshop. His job was to work the bellows, a large, hand-cranked apparatus that fed air to the coal fire, turning it into a roaring, white-hot inferno. It was the most brutal, physically demanding, and least intellectual work he had ever done. The heat was immense. The air was thick with smoke. The noise of the hammer was deafening. His internal conflict was a raging war. His antagonist, his static identity, was being assaulted on every sensory level. "This is absurd," it screamed over the roar of the fire. "You are a respected intellectual, a man of clean lines and quiet spaces. This is the work of a laborer. It is beneath you. You are dirty, you are sweating, you are losing your edge, your control." Every fiber of his being, every conditioned reflex of his carefully constructed self, wanted to flee, to return to the cool, quiet, and controlled sanctuary of his apartment. The external conflict was the relentless, unforgiving nature of the work itself. Master Jean was not a gentle teacher. He demanded absolute, undivided presence. If Kai's rhythm on the bellows faltered for a second, the temperature of the fire would drop, and the master would bark a sharp, guttural command. Kai's soft, architect's hands were quickly covered in blisters. His muscles ached with a deep, profound exhaustion he had never known. He was not just tired, he was being physically dismantled. The world of his old identity tried to pull him back. He received an email from the organizers of a prestigious architectural biennale in Venice. They were inviting him to be a keynote speaker, to give a presentation on the philosophy of minimalism. It was a powerful affirmation of his old self, a call to return to the world of ideas, of intellectualism, of the clean, cool, and celebrated identity he had built. He brought his pain, his exhaustion, and his conflict to Master Jean. "I can't do this," he confessed one evening, his body aching, his hands raw. "I am a thinker, not a worker. My body is not made for this." He told him about the Venice invitation, about the temptation to return to a world where he was respected for his mind, not his muscle. Master Jean was examining a piece of newly cast bronze, tapping it with a small hammer, listening to its tone. "You are correct," he said, not looking at Kai. "Your body is not made for this. The body you have is not made for this. It is a stiff, unused, and frightened body. We are not just building a bell. We are building you a new body. A body that can hold the fire." He then gave Kai the first, crucial piece of the tuning method. "You are only feeling the fire," he said. "Now, you must begin to use it. Tomorrow, you will not just work the bellows. You will take the hammer. Your work is not to shape the metal. It is to strike it. Over and over. You will do this until your mind is too tired to think, and your arm knows the rhythm of the fire itself. You will not affirm a new you. You will hammer it into existence." He is being asked to move from a passive, suffering observer of the fire to an active, participating creator within it. He is being told that his new self must be forged, not thought into existence. Can he possibly find the strength to pick up the hammer and begin the brutal, painful, and transformative work of his own reconstruction? Part 4. The hammer was heavier than Kai could have imagined. The loop of his passive endurance was closed, and a new, brutal loop of active, physical creation began. His new job was to take the rough, newly cast pieces of bronze and simply hammer them, over and over, a process that compacted the metal and began the long, slow journey of tuning its resonant frequency. The first few days were a symphony of failure. His strikes were weak, clumsy, and arrhythmic. The noise he produced was a jarring, chaotic clanging, not the clear, ringing tone that came from the master's hammer. The subtrauma of his own physical inadequacy became the central, humiliating theme of his new life. His static identity, the cool, detached intellectual, was being systematically demolished. He was no longer the brilliant architect, he was the clumsy apprentice, a man whose body would not obey his mind's commands. A new, unexpected subtrauma emerged in the form of Master Jin's granddaughter, a young woman named Sora who ran a small, contemporary art gallery next to the workshop. She was a bridge between the ancient world of her grandfather and the modern, fast-paced world of the soul art scene. She was sharp, intelligent, and deeply unimpressed by Kai's former status. She saw only the man in front of her, the awkward, blister-handed apprentice. "My grandfather has had many apprentices," she told him one day, as she watched him struggle. "Most of them leave. They want the secret, but they do not want the fire. The secret is the fire." Her words were a quiet, constant challenge, a reminder that the path he was on was one of transformation, not of intellectual tourism. The pressure from his old life continued. The Venice Biennale organizers sent a follow-up email, asking for a title for his keynote speech. The request was a powerful, ghostly echo from a life that felt 1,000,000 miles away. He looked at his raw, blistered hands, and he tried to imagine writing a speech on the philosophy of minimalism. The dissonance was so profound it was almost comical. But in the midst of the pain and the failure, something new was being born. The daily, rhythmic, and physically exhausting act of hammering was doing something to him that no amount of meditation ever had. It was bypassing his analytical mind. There were moments, just fleeting at first, where his thinking would stop. There was only the weight of the hammer, the red glow of the metal, and the ringing sound. In these moments, he was not Kai, the architect. He was just a body, in a rhythm, in a fire. He was, for the first time in his life, completely and utterly present. He is being physically broken down and rebuilt by a new, primal rhythm. He is beginning to experience moments of no mind, of pure, embodied presence. But this is a painful, destructive, and seemingly purposeless process. How can this brutal physical act of hammering a piece of metal possibly be the key to tuning his own identity and creating a new, more joyful reality? Part 5. After a month of the relentless fire and the hammer, Kai was a different man. Not a better man, but a different one. He was leaner, harder, his body shaped by the fire. The softness of the intellectual was gone, replaced by the grounded, powerful presence of a maker. The loop of his initial, clumsy struggle was closed. The final, most important loop of his transformation was about to begin. He had become proficient with the hammer. His strikes were now strong, steady, and rhythmic. The sound he produced was no longer a chaotic clanging, but a clear, resonant, and musical tone. He had learned the language of the metal. One morning, Master Jean did not hand him a rough piece of bronze. He led him to the magnificent, finished bell that hung in the center of the workshop. For a month, the old man said, you have been hammering. You have been putting your energy, your breath, your very life force into the metal. Now, it is time for the metal to speak back to you. He handed Kai a large, felt-covered mallet. This is the second, and most important, step of the tuning, he said. It is the art of listening. You will strike the bell, once. And then, you will not just listen to the sound. You will feel the vibration of it in every cell of your body. You will allow your own body to become a bell. You will allow your frequency to match its frequency. You will not visualize a new identity. You will receive it as a direct, physical transmission of pure, resonant sound. This was it. The culmination of all the pain, all the sweat, all the fire. This was the real method. It was not an affirmation. It was not a meditation. It was a direct, physical, and energetic attunement. A quote from the mystic and musician Hazrat Inayat Khan, whose book Kai had seen on Master Jin's shelf, became a living truth. The knower of the mystery of sound knows the mystery of the whole universe. Kai took the mallet. His heart was calm. He was not afraid. He stood before the great bell, took a deep, grounding breath, and he struck it. A single, powerful, and profound C-sharp note exploded into the silent workshop. But it was more than a note. It was a wave of pure, coherent, and incredibly complex vibration that washed over him, through him. It was not something he heard with his ears. It was something he felt in his bones, in his blood, in the very marrow of his being. In that moment, the old, static identity of Kai, the cool, detached, and minimalist architect, shattered. It was not a violent death. It was a graceful dissolution, like a sandcastle in the face of a perfect, powerful wave. And in the space that was left, the frequency of the bell, the frequency of a perfect, resonant, and joyful wholeness, took its place. He was not Kai listening to a bell. He was the bell. He has had the experience. He has received the transmission. His old identity has been shattered and replaced by a new, resonant frequency. He has been tuned. But what happens when this newly tuned instrument returns to the world? What kind of music will he now create? This profound, vibrational experience has struck a chord with you? Subscribe for more stories that reveal the deep, physical science of quantum alignment. Part 6. The attunement with the great bell was a definitive, irreversible shift in Kai's state of being. The previous loop closed, he had been tuned. Now, the consequences of his new frequency began to ripple out into his reality. His first act was to sit down and write a letter. He did not write a resignation letter or an apology. He wrote a letter to the jury of the Living Future competition, the very people who had rejected his design. He did not ask them to reconsider. He thanked them. "Thank you," he wrote, with a new, humble, and authentic voice, "for showing me the truth. You were right. My design was a machine with no ghost. I have spent the last 2 months in a fire, and I have finally met my own ghost. I am a different architect now, and I will spend the rest of my life learning how to build a home for him." The consequences of his new, embodied state were immediate. He returned to his workshop, but he did not see it with his old eyes. He saw the cold, minimalist perfection, and he felt a wave of compassionate understanding for the man who had needed such a fortress. And then, with a joyful and almost mischievous energy, he began to change it. He bought plants, dozens of them, letting them spill their chaotic green life into the space. He bought a beautiful, warm, and richly textured Persian rug. He replaced his chrome and glass furniture with pieces made of warm, living wood. He was not just redecorating. He was performing a conscious act of environmental tuning. He was making his outer world a match for his new, inner frequency. His creative process was reborn. He sat down at his drafting table, and he began to sketch. But his lines were different now. They were no longer just straight and perfect. They were fluid, they were organic, they were alive. He was not just designing a building, he was designing a feeling. He was designing a home for the human spirit, a space that was a perfect, harmonious blend of the cool, intellectual clarity of the mind and the warm, resonant, and beautifully imperfect energy of the heart. He has transformed his inner world and is now transforming his outer one. He is creating from a new, whole, and powerful place. But he is still a man without a project, without a client. Will the world have a place for this new architect and his new, soulful vision? Part 7. For the next 6 months, Kai lived in a state of quiet, joyful, and prolific creation. He did not seek out work. He did not network. He simply, and with a profound and steady trust, did his work. He filled his notebooks with a new kind of architecture, a vibrational architecture, designs that were based on the principles of resonance, harmony, and the sacred geometry he had learned from the bells. This was his final and most profound test. To trust that his new, authentic frequency was, in itself, the most powerful form of marketing he could ever do. His savings dwindled. His old colleagues from the architecture world called, their voices full of concern, telling him about new, prestigious competitions he should be entering. But he politely declined. He was no longer in the business of competing. He was in the business of creating. The dark night came in the form of a final, tempting offer. A massive, state-owned corporation in China offered him a contract to design their new, 100-story headquarters in Shanghai. It was a project of immense scale, budget, and prestige. It was a chance to build a monument, a testament to his technical skill. It was a final, seductive call from his old identity. He consolidated his growth by seeing the offer, not as a temptation, but as a diagnostic tool. He sat with the offer, and he felt into it. He felt the coldness, the ego, the disconnection from the human scale. It did not resonate. It was a dead frequency. He politely declined, an act that his old self would have deemed absolute madness. He chose instead to continue his work on a small, useless project, the design of a small, simple, and beautiful community music school for a poor neighborhood in his hometown. He was choosing resonance over reputation. He was choosing the music over the noise. He had become a master of his own frequency. He has passed the final test of his own integrity, choosing soul over scale. He is creating for the sheer joy of it, with a profound trust in his own inner guidance. But a broadcast requires a receiver. Who will hear this new, quiet, and powerful frequency he is sending out into the world? Part 8. The receiver appeared, as they always do, in a moment of synchronicity. Sora, Master Jin's granddaughter, the sharp and intelligent gallery owner, came to Seoul for a contemporary art fair. She visited Kai in his newly transformed apartment and studio. She was stunned by the change in him, and even more, by the new work that filled his sketchbooks. "Kai," she said, her voice full of a new and profound respect. "This is not architecture. This is healing. This is what the world is starving for." The loop of his solitary creation was closed. The final loop, the one that would bring his work into the world, began with her next sentence. "There is a man you must meet. He is a philanthropist, a true patron of the arts, but he is different. He does not invest in things. He invests in frequencies." The man was a reclusive and almost mythical figure in the Korean art world, a man known only as the chairman. He had made a fortune in technology in his youth, and now dedicated his life to funding projects that he believed would create a new, more harmonious future. He was famous for his unorthodox methods. He did not look at business plans. He listened to the creators themselves. Sora arranged a meeting. Kai prepared for it not by creating a presentation, but by choosing a single object. He went to Master Jin's workshop and, with the old master's blessing, he borrowed a small, perfectly tuned bronze bell, one that he himself had hammered. The meeting is set. The patron is waiting. Kai is not going to pitch a project, he is going to transmit a frequency. This is the ultimate test of his new, embodied philosophy. Will the man who listens to the energy of creation be able to hear the beautiful, coherent song that Kai has become? Part 9. The meeting was held in a place of profound silence, a traditional Korean tea house set in a private bamboo forest on the outskirts of Seoul. The chairman was a man in his late 60s, with a face that was completely serene, and eyes that seemed to see not just Kai, but the very energy field around him. They sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the whisper of the wind in the bamboo. Sora tells me you have learned the secret of the fire, the chairman said finally, his voice a quiet, resonant hum. Kai did not speak. He simply unwrapped the small, bronze bell and placed it on the low table between them. He then took the small, wooden mallet, and he struck it once. A single, pure, and impossibly beautiful note filled the silence. The note hung in the air, its vibrations seeming to weave the very space between them into a coherent, harmonious whole. The chairman closed his eyes. He did not just hear the note. He felt it. He recognized it. It was the frequency he had been searching for. It was the frequency of a healed past, an integrated present, and a limitless future. It was the frequency of wholeness. He opened his eyes. They were shining with a profound and joyful understanding. Your letter to the Living Future Committee found its way to me, he said. They thought you were a madman. I thought you were the only sane architect in the world. He then made Kai an offer that was not just a project, but a new reality. I am the anonymous patron behind the Living Future Center, he revealed. The jury's decision was disappointing, but informative. It showed me that the old way is dead. I am scrapping the competition. I am scrapping the old design. The project is yours. I do not want your old, minimalist machine. I want you to build me a bell. A building that will heal this city. A building that will sing. The promise of the introduction was fulfilled. The identity was the frequency match. He had not changed his reality by thinking about it. He had changed it by going into the fire, by hammering his very being into a new, more coherent, and more beautiful form. He had become a new bell, and the world had no choice but to ring with his new song. The dream is manifest, in a form more profound and more perfect than he could have ever imagined. He has not just won the project, he has become its living soul. But what is the true, lasting impact of a man who has learned to build not with concrete and steel, but with frequency and fire? Part 10, The Center for a Living Future, designed by Kai, was a masterpiece of the new world. It was a building that breathed. It was a structure whose curves and acoustics were based on the harmonic principles of Master Jin's bells. It was not just a place of work and art, it was a place of healing, a massive, architectural tuning fork that gently and lovingly brought all who entered it into a state of coherence. Kai's life became a perfect expression of his new, integrated identity. He was a celebrated, world-renowned architect, but he was no longer a ghost. He was a man of deep warmth, of joyful connection, of profound, embodied presence. He married a woman who was a landscape artist, a woman who taught him the chaotic, beautiful wisdom of the garden. His home was no longer a museum, it was a vibrant, living sanctuary. He had learned the ultimate secret of identity. It is not a fixed, static thing to be protected or overcome. It is a dynamic, resonant field, a song that you are constantly singing with your very being. You cannot change the song with your mind. You must change it in the fire of experience, in the rhythmic, physical, and transformative acts of your own becoming. You do not affirm a new identity. You forge it. His journey has created a new paradigm for architecture and for life. But what is the next creation for a soul who has learned to be the bell, and not just the bell maker? We see Kai a year later. He is not in his studio. He is back in the ancient workshop of Master Jean. The old master is frail now, his hammering days over. He is sitting, watching as Kai, his final and greatest apprentice, teaches a young boy how to hold the hammer, how to feel the fire, how to listen to the song of the metal. He
is not just building bells. He is passing on the fire. He is ensuring the frequency will never be lost. He learned that the self is not a thing to be thought about, but an instrument to be tuned. What is the fire? What is the hammer? What is the bell that your own soul is calling you to, so you may forge the new frequency of you? Your identity is the set point for your entire reality. Trying to manifest a reality that is a vibrational mismatch for your current identity is like trying to listen to a radio station on the wrong frequency. It will only produce static. Affirmations and meditation are not always enough to turn the dial. Sometimes, you must rebuild the radio. Your challenge is this. For 1 week, choose one new simple, physical, and rhythmic action that is aligned with the identity you wish to embody. If you want to be an author, your action is to handwrite 1 page every day. If you want to be an athlete, your action is to take a 10-minute run every day. Do not focus on the outcome. Focus only on the physical rhythm of the act. This is the first step of forging. What is the one new physical rhythm you will commit to this week? Declare it in the comments below. For more stories that provide the deep, physical, and transformative methods of quantum alignment, make sure you subscribe and join this community of forgers.